Simone Clarke was just a waitress when she approached table 12 that evening. But after the customer left, the newspaper headline she saw in the kitchen changed everything. Alexander Hunt expands restaurant empire in New York, searching for the best chefs. The man in the photo was the same customer who had been rude to her, complained about everything, and didn't even leave a tip. Questions exploded in Simone's mind. Why had Alexander Hunt acted that way? Was this a coincidence or a test? And most importantly, should Simone tell him her real identity or stay silent? Because Alexander Hunt wasn't just a billionaire businessman. He was the only person who could make Simone's dreams come true. 28-year-old Simone Clarke stood in the staff area of Luminescence, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants, adjusting her black server's apron for the third time. Her reflection in the small mirror showed tired eyes with dark circles underneath, evidence of another late night studying new culinary techniques after her shift ended. To everyone at Luminescence, Simone was just another waitress trying to make ends meet in New York City. They saw the uniform, the practiced smile, the efficient way she moved between tables. What they didn't see was the Bernardin Culinary School diploma hidden in her tiny Brooklyn apartment, or the 3 years she'd spent training in Parisian kitchens under Michelin-starred chefs. Simone had returned to New York 18 months ago with dreams of opening her own restaurant. But reality had hit hard. Startup capital was impossible to secure without connections or family money, and executive chef positions required years of experience in established New York kitchens. Her savings had run out within 6 months. That's when she'd taken the server position at Luminescence. It was supposed to be temporary, just until she could network her way into a kitchen position. But 18 months had passed, and she was still carrying plates instead of creating them. The restaurant's head chef, Bernard Rousseau, knew about her background. He'd promised to help her transition to the kitchen, but there were always excuses. The timing wasn't right. They were fully staffed, maybe next quarter. Simone was beginning to suspect he preferred having an overqualified server who understood food well enough to properly describe dishes to wealthy patrons. Simone, the sharp voice of floor manager Patricia Reynolds, cut through her thoughts. Table 12 just sat. VIP guest, very important. I want your best service tonight. Simone nodded, grabbed her order pad, and headed toward table 12. The evening shift at Luminescence was always busy on Thursdays. Wealthy business people celebrating deals, tourists splurging on once-in-a-lifetime meals, couples on anniversary dinners. Table 12 was in a prime location, corner booth with a view of the glittering Manhattan skyline. The man sitting there was in his early 40s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Simone made in 3 months. His dark hair had distinguished silver at the temples, and he radiated the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. But it was his expression that made Simone's stomach tighten, the look of someone who viewed service staff as barely human, there only to fulfill his needs. Good evening, sir. Welcome to Luminescence. My name is Simone, and I'll be water. No ice. Bring it now. Simone blinked at the interruption. Of course, sir. Would you like to hear our specials this evening? The man finally looked up at her, his eyes cold and dismissive. Do I look like I need you to recite a list? Just bring the water. Simone felt heat rise in her cheeks, but maintained her professional smile. Right away, sir. As she walked away, she heard him mutter something to his phone that sounded like incompetent staff. She gritted her teeth and headed to the service station. Who's the charmer at table 12? Asked Jesse, another server, as Simone poured water. I don't know, but Patricia said he's VIP. So far he's living up to the very important pain definition. Jesse laughed. Good luck with that one. Simone returned to table 12 with the water, which the man barely acknowledged. Are you ready to order, sir? Obviously not. I haven't looked at the menu yet. Come back in 5 minutes. It was actually 8 minutes before he signaled her over again. When Simone approached, he didn't look up from his phone. I'll have the duck. But tell the kitchen no cherry reduction. It's too sweet. Instead, I want a port wine reduction with shallots. And the vegetables should be al dente, not the mushy mess they usually serve here. Simone's professional mask slipped slightly. Sir, our chef Bernard Rousseau personally. Are you arguing with me about what I want? No, sir. I'm simply noting that Chef Rousseau's duck preparation is award-winning as presented. The man finally looked at her directly, his expression condescending. I've eaten at 3-star Michelin restaurants across Europe. I think I know what good food is. Just put in the order as I said. Simone bit back several responses and simply nodded. Of course, sir. In the kitchen, Bernard looked annoyed when she relayed the modifications. Who does this person think he is, redesigning my dishes? Patricia said he's VIP. Very important something. Bernard muttered in French, but began preparing the modified dish. Simone waited, watching him work. She could see 3 things wrong with his technique already. The port reduction temperature was too high. He was overcrowding the pan with the shallots, and the duck breast was being cooked too aggressively. When the dish was ready, Simone carried it out with low expectations. The customer cut into the duck, took 1 bite, and immediately set down his fork with an expression of disgust. This is overcooked. The reduction is burnt. And these vegetables. He pushed the plate away. Take it back. Simone felt anger flash through her, but kept her voice level. I'm very sorry, sir. I'll have the kitchen prepare a replacement immediately. No, I've lost my appetite. Just bring me the check. Sir, there won't be a charge for. I said bring me the check. Simone returned to the kitchen, where Bernard looked outraged. He's not paying? After insulting my cooking, he wants the check anyway. When Simone brought the bill, 0 balance as was policy for returned dishes, the man barely glanced at it. He stood, buttoned his suit jacket, and walked out without another word. No thank you, no apology for the inconvenience, and certainly no tip. Lovely guy, Jessie commented, watching him leave. $20, says Patricia knew he was going to be difficult, and that's why she gave him to you. Simone sighed. Probably. The rest of her shift passed in a blur of other tables, other customers, most of them pleasant or at least neutral. But the interaction with table 12 lingered like a bad taste. It wasn't just the rudeness. Working in service meant dealing with difficult people. It was the casual dismissiveness, the way he'd looked at her like she was nothing. At 11 p.m., after her shift ended, Simone was in the staff area changing out of her uniform when she noticed a newspaper someone had left on the break room table. The business section was folded open, and a headline caught her eye. Alexander Hunt expands restaurant empire in New York, searching for the best chefs. Simone picked up the paper, her heart beginning to race. The article featured a large photo of a man in a suit, standing in what looked like a construction site. It was the customer from table 12. Her hands trembled as she read. Alexander Hunt, the 42-year-old founder of Hunt Hospitality Group, announced plans yesterday to open his most ambitious restaurant yet in New York City. Hunt, whose empire includes 23 restaurants across the United States and Europe, is known for his exacting standards and innovative approach to dining. I'm looking for a chef who isn't afraid to challenge conventions, Hunt said in a statement. Someone who understands that great food requires both technical mastery and creative courage. Hunt revealed he will spend the next month dining anonymously at New York's top restaurants, searching for the perfect executive chef for his new flagship location. The position, which comes with a 6-figure salary and significant creative freedom, has already attracted interest from established chefs across the country. Simone read the article 3 times, her mind reeling. Alexander Hunt. The Alexander Hunt. He owned restaurants she'd dreamed of working in. His Las Vegas establishment had 2 Michelin stars. His Chicago restaurant had been named one of the world's best 3 years running. And he'd just been at table 12, being rude, sending back food. But why? Was it really just bad service and bad food? Or was this part of his search, testing not just the food but how restaurants handled difficult customers? Simone's mind raced back through the evening. The modified duck order. The complaint about overcooking. He hadn't been wrong. Bernard had overcooked it, and the reduction had been slightly burnt because the temperature was too high. Had Alexander Hunt been testing whether the server would defend bad food or acknowledge the problem? Had he been checking if Luminescence maintained quality under pressure? And if so, what had her responses told him? You okay? Jessie had appeared in the doorway. You look like you've seen a ghost. Simone held up the newspaper. The guy from table 12. Do you know who he was? Jessie squinted at the photo. That's him? Holy shit. That's Alexander Hunt. He owns like half the restaurants in America. Why didn't Patricia tell us? Probably didn't know. It says right there he's dining anonymously. That's the whole point. Jessie's eyes widened. Oh man. We just gave him terrible service and burnt duck. Bernard's going to freak out when he finds out. Simone was barely listening. Her mind was spinning with possibilities and regrets. The one person in the restaurant industry who could change her life had been sitting at her table, and she'd let him walk away disappointed. But another thought was forming. The article said Hunt would be dining at New York restaurants for a month. He was searching for a chef, and he'd been unhappy with Luminescence. What if? What if Simone could somehow show him what she was really capable of? The next morning, Simone sat in her small Brooklyn apartment, staring at her Bernardin diploma on the wall. She'd made a decision during a sleepless night, but it was crazy. Possibly career-ending if it went wrong. She was going to find Alexander Hunt and show him she was the chef he was looking for. First, she needed information. Simone spent the entire day researching. Alexander Hunt's company had a sleek website, but it revealed little about his personal schedule. His social media was managed by professionals, just business updates and restaurant promotions. But Simone had something better than social media. She had the New York Restaurant Network. She called Rachel, a former classmate from Bernardin who now worked at a 2-star Michelin restaurant in Tribeca. Rachel, hypothetically, if you were a billionaire restaurant owner looking for a chef, where would you eat? Rachel laughed. Why? You got a tip? Maybe. Help me out. Okay. Well, if I were looking for talent, I'd hit up the places making noise right now. Probably start with 11 Madison Park, hip per se, Le Cuckoo, basically the places with innovative chefs doing interesting things. Simone made notes. What about less obvious choices? If he's smart, he might check out some of the smaller places. Undiscovered gems. Places where talented chefs are working without recognition. That gave Simone an idea. Hunt wasn't just looking for someone with Michelin stars. He was looking for someone who challenged conventions and had creative courage. He might be looking at unexpected places. Over the next week, Simone did something slightly crazy. She called in sick to Luminescence 3 nights in a row and spent those evenings visiting smaller, ambitious restaurants across Manhattan. Places where young chefs were taking risks, combining unexpected flavors, reimagining classic dishes. She was looking for Alexander Hunt. On the third night, at a small restaurant in the West Village called Maison Bleu, she found him. He was sitting alone at the bar, dressed more casually than he'd been at Luminescence, but it was definitely him. Simone's heart pounded. This was her chance, but she needed to be smart about it. She couldn't just approach him and say, "Hey, remember me? I'm actually a trained chef." That would seem desperate and unprofessional. Instead, she sat 3 seats away at the bar and ordered a glass of wine. She watched as Hunt tasted his appetizer, seared scallops with a cauliflower puree and truffle oil. He took one bite, and Simone saw his expression shift, a small nod of approval. The scallops were perfectly cooked. When the bartender came to take Hunt's plate, Simone heard Hunt say, "Tell the chef the scallops were excellent. Perfect sear, good flavor balance." This was good food. Hunt was appreciating it. Simone needed to find a way to engage. The opportunity came when Hunt's entree arrived, duck breast again, this time with a fig compote and roasted root vegetables. Hunt cut into it, tasted, and frowned slightly. "Problem, sir?" the bartender asked. "The duck is slightly under, and the fig compote is too sweet. It's overwhelming the meat." Hunt was right. Simone could see from where she sat that the duck was undercooked, and she knew that fig compote could easily become cloying if not balanced properly. Before she could think better of it, Simone spoke up. "The acid's missing." Hunt turned to look at her, eyebrow raised. "Excuse me. The fig compote. It needs acid to balance the sweetness. Probably some red wine vinegar or lemon juice. And the duck should rest longer before slicing. That would help with the temperature issue." Hunt studied her for a long moment. "You're a chef?" This was it. Truth or deflection? "I'm trained as one," Simone said carefully. Bernardin Institute. 3 years in Paris. "But you're not working as a chef?" "Not currently." "Why not?" Simone met his eyes directly. "Because the restaurant industry is about connections as much as talent, and I haven't made the right connections yet." Hunt's expression was unreadable. "You think you're talented?" "I know I am." It was bold, maybe too bold. But Simone was tired of being humble, of hiding her abilities while serving people who looked through her. "Interesting," Hunt said. He gestured to the empty seat beside him. "Join me." Simone moved over, her heart racing. This was happening. "So tell me." Hunt said, turning slightly toward her. If you're so talented, why are you? He paused, and she saw recognition flicker across his face. Wait, you were at Luminescence last week. You were my server. Simone felt her stomach drop, but forced herself to stay composed. Yes. And you're here by coincidence? No. Hunt leaned back, a slight smile playing at his lips. You tracked me down. I read the article about your search for a chef. And yes, I tracked you down. That's either very bold or very desperate. It's both, Simone admitted. I've been waiting tables for 18 months while trying to break into kitchens. I have the training, the skills, the passion. What I don't have is opportunity. So when I realized who you were, I decided to create my own opportunity. By stalking me to restaurants. By showing you I'm serious enough to do what it takes. Hunt was quiet for a moment, studying her. You said the duck at Luminescence was overcooked. You were right. The reduction was burnt too. I know. I watched Chef Bernard prepare it. His pan temperature was too high, and he rushed the reduction. But you didn't say anything to me. You were a customer complaining about food. My job was to take it back and have it replaced, not to give you a culinary critique. What if I told you that was exactly what I was looking for? Someone who would be honest about food quality instead of defending mediocrity. Simone felt a chill. Was that a test? Everything's a test in this business, Hunt said. Every dish, every service, every interaction. The question is whether you pass or fail. So did I fail? Hunt smiled, not the cold expression from Luminescence, but something warmer, almost amused. You failed the first test at Luminescence. You defended bad food and didn't push back against an unreasonable customer. But you passed the second test tonight. There was a second test? You're here. You found me. You're not afraid to be direct. And you correctly identified what was wrong with this duck before I even mentioned it. Hunt paused. Tell me something. What would you do with this dish if you were making it? This was her moment. Simone looked at the plate, her chef's mind immediately analyzing and recreating. First, I'd source better duck. This is pecan, which is fine, but Muscovy has better flavor and less fat. I'd score the skin in a crosshatch pattern and render it slowly in a cold pan. That's the key to perfect crispy skin. The meat would be cooked to medium rare, 135 degrees, then rested for 8 minutes. Hunt was listening intently. For the compote, I'd roast the figs first to concentrate their flavor and reduce water content. Then I'd add red wine vinegar, a touch of honey, fresh thyme, and a pinch of black pepper. The sweetness would be there but balanced with acid and herbaceousness. And instead of roasted root vegetables, I do a celery root puree. It's earthy but clean, and it wouldn't compete with the figure. Why celery root specifically? Because duck is rich and sweet figs are rich and celery root is subtle. It provides base notes without adding more intensity. Think of it like music. You need moments of quiet to appreciate the crescendo. Hunt was silent for several seconds. Then he said, Have you ever heard of a restaurant called Monarch? Your Chicago location. 2 Michelin stars. Farm to table with French technique. I'm opening a similar concept here in New York. Bigger, more ambitious. I want it to be the best restaurant in the city within 2 years. That requires a very specific kind of chef. Simone's mouth was dry. What kind? Someone technically perfect, but not afraid to break rules. Someone who understands tradition, but isn't imprisoned by it. Someone who can lead a kitchen with authority, but doesn't lead with ego. Hunt paused. And someone hungry enough to prove themselves. I'm all of those things. Maybe. But I'm not going to hire you as my executive chef based on one conversation about duck. Simone felt disappointment crash through her, but Hunt continued. However, I am going to give you a trial. My test kitchen in Chelsea. 3 days. You'll have access to whatever ingredients you want, whatever equipment you need. I want you to create a 7-course tasting menu that shows me who you are as a chef. And if you like what I create, then we talk about the executive chef position. 6-figure salary, full creative control, profit sharing after the first year. Hunt's expression became serious. But if I don't like what you create, this conversation never happened. You go back to Luminescence or wherever else you end up. Understood. Simone didn't hesitate. Understood. Good. Hunt pulled out a business card and wrote an address on the back. Monday morning, 8 a.m. Don't be late. As he stood to leave, Simone said, Mr. Hunt, why were you so rude at Luminescence? Hunt smiled slightly. Because I needed to see how you handled pressure and disrespect. Some chefs crumble under criticism. Some get defensive. The best ones stay calm, stay professional, and keep working. You did that. He paused at the door. By the way, you were right to track me down. It showed initiative. But if this doesn't work out, don't make a habit of stalking potential employers. Most of them won't appreciate it. After he left, Simone sat at the bar for another 20 minutes, her mind racing. She'd done it. She'd gotten her shot. Now she just had to prove she deserved it. The next 3 days were a blur. Simone called in sick to Luminescence, truly sick this time, consumed with planning her menu. She filled notebooks with ideas, crossed out dishes, reconsidered approaches. The test kitchen in Chelsea was a dream, professional-grade equipment, pristine workspace, and a fully stocked ingredient room that Hunt's assistant told her to use freely. Mr. Hunt wants you to have everything you need, the assistant said. No budget restrictions. Order anything. Simone had created hundreds of dishes in her training, but this felt different. This wasn't for a grade or approval from an instructor. This was for her future. She decided her menu would tell a story, her story. The journey from traditional French training to finding her own voice. Course 1. Amuse-bouche, oyster with champagne foam and caviar. Classic French elegance, perfect technique. Course 2. Root vegetables reimagined. Carrot prepared 3 ways, roasted, pureed, and pickled, with hazelnut and brown butter. Showing versatility and respect for simple ingredients. Course 3. Seared scallops with corn silk and charred lemon. Summer brightness, clean flavors. Course 4. Duck, of course, with the fig compote she described to Hunt, celery root puree, and crispy duck skin shard, proving she could execute what she'd theorized. Course 5. Short rib with miso glaze, fermented vegetables, and black garlic. East meets West, showing range beyond French technique. Course 6. Cheese course, local farmhouse cheese with honeycomb, candied walnuts, and lavender crackers. Respecting tradition with a modern touch. Course 7. Dessert, deconstructed lemon tart. All the elements separated and reimagined, challenging the diner to find familiar flavors in unfamiliar forms. For 3 days, Simone worked on until midnight, perfecting each dish. She practiced plating until her hands cramped. She tasted and adjusted seasonings dozens of times. She pushed herself harder than she'd ever pushed before. On Wednesday afternoon, Alexander Hunt arrived at the test kitchen. He wasn't alone. He'd brought 2 people with him. One was an older woman who Simone recognized as Margaret Chun, a James Beard award-winning chef and food critic. The other was a younger man in an expensive suit who Hunt introduced as his business partner. This is it, Hunt said simply. Show us what you can do. Simone had prepared for this. She'd portioned everything, organized her stations, timed each course precisely. Now she just had to execute. She moved through her menu with focused intensity, narrating each dish as she plated it, explaining her choices and techniques. Hunt and his guests sat at a small table she'd set up, tasting each course in silence while making notes. The room was so quiet Simone could hear her own heartbeat. After the final course, the deconstructed lemon tart, Hunt set down his fork and looked at Simone for a long moment. Tell me about the duck, he said. Simone's stomach clenched. Was that criticism? What would you like to know? Why did you choose to recreate that specific dish? You could have done anything. Simone took a breath. Because that dish represents a turning point. At Luminescence, I was just a server, powerless to fix bad food. Here, I had the power to do it right. That duck represents what I can do when I'm given the opportunity. Hunt nodded slowly. Then he turned to Margaret Chun. Your thoughts? Chun, who had barely spoken during the meal, leaned back in her chair. The technique is flawless. Classical training is evident in every course. But what impressed me most is the restraint. Many young chefs try to show off, putting too many elements on a plate. This menu is confident enough to be simple. Hunt looked at his business partner, who said, from a business perspective, these ingredients are expensive but not unreasonable. The plating is elegant without being fussy. This could work. Hunt stood up and walked over to where Simone stood, her chef's coat stained with the evidence of 3 days' work. Simone Clarke, he said formally, I'd like to offer you the position of executive chef at Monarch New York. Starting salary is $150,000 per year plus performance bonuses. You'll have full creative control over the menu, but I'll expect you to collaborate with me on concept and direction. The restaurant opens in 6 months. Are you interested? Simone felt tears prick her eyes, but blinked them back. Yes, absolutely yes. Hunt extended his hand. Welcome to Hunt Hospitality Group. I'll have contracts drawn up by Friday. After Hunt and his team left, Simone stood alone in the kitchen, looking at the empty plates, the satisfied reviews they'd left behind, the business card Hunt had given her with his direct number. She pulled out her phone and called her mother in New Orleans, who she hadn't spoken to in months because she'd been too proud to admit she was just waiting tables. Mom, I have news. I'm going to be an executive chef. 6 months later, Monarch New York opened to rave reviews. The New York Times gave it 3 stars, calling Simone's food technically brilliant yet emotionally resonant. Food critics praised the menu's balance of tradition and innovation. On opening night, Simone stood in her kitchen, directing a team of 12 cooks with calm authority. Through the kitchen window, she could see the dining room filled with guests, including several faces she recognized from the restaurant industry. Alexander Hunt appeared in the kitchen doorway, impeccable in a suit, surveying the controlled chaos. "How's it going, chef?" he asked. Simone smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. "We're in the weeds on table 8's order, but everything else is flowing well." "Good." Hunt paused. "You know, I never properly apologized for how I behaved at Luminescence that night. You were testing me." "I was. But that doesn't mean I wasn't also a complete ass." Hunt smiled slightly. "For what it's worth, you passed every test I threw at you, including the ones you didn't know were tests." "What do you mean?" "I left a note with Patricia at Luminescence the next day, asking for your full name and background. She told me about your culinary training. That's when I knew you were someone worth watching." Hunt looked around the kitchen. What you've built here in 6 months, it's impressive. Better than I expected. Thank you for giving me the chance. Thank you for having the courage to take it. Most people wouldn't have tracked me down. They would have just gone back to serving tables and wondering what if. A year after opening, Monarch New York received its first Michelin Star. At the award ceremony, Simone stood on stage in a chef's coat, accepting the recognition she'd dreamed of since culinary school. In her acceptance speech, she said, "This star represents more than just good food. It represents taking risks, believing in yourself even when others don't, and understanding that sometimes the biggest opportunities come from the smallest moments. Thank you to everyone who believed in me, especially Alexander Hunt, who saw potential in a waitress with a dream." After the ceremony, a young woman approached Simone, a server, based on her outfit, who'd clearly come directly from her shift. "Chef Clarke? I'm sorry to bother you, but I had to tell you something. I'm a server at a restaurant downtown. I've been saving money for culinary school, but it feels impossible. Seeing what you did, it gives me hope." Simone remembered being that person, full of dreams but unsure how to achieve them. "What's your name?" "Elena." "Elena, listen to me. You don't have to wait for someone to give you permission to pursue your dreams. If you have talent and determination, you'll find a way. And if you ever need advice or a reference, you call me." Simone handed her a business card. "I mean that." As Elena walked away clutching the card like a treasure, Alexander Hunt appeared beside Simone. "Paying it forward?" he asked. "Someone gave me a chance when they didn't have to. Seems only fair to do the same." Hunt smiled. "You know, I have another restaurant opening next year. In Los Angeles. I'm going to need an executive chef there too, someone I trust to maintain the Monarch standard. Interested in helping me find them?" Simone thought about it. She could help discover the next talented chef stuck waiting tables, wondering if they'd ever get their shot. "Yes," she said. "But this time, we're not being rude to test them. There are better ways to evaluate talent." Hunt laughed. "Agreed. I learned my lesson on that one." 3 years after that opening night, Monarch New York had 2 Michelin stars and was regularly named among the world's best restaurants. Simone had been featured in Food and Wine, Bon Appetit, and the Wall Street Journal. She'd published a cookbook that became a bestseller. But her proudest moment came when Elena, the server who'd approached her at the Michelin ceremony, graduated from culinary school, and Simone hired her as a line cook at Monarch. On Elena's first day, Simone gave her the same advice she wished someone had given her years earlier. Your past doesn't define your future. Whether you're a server or a student or someone people underestimate, none of that matters. What matters is what you can create when you're given the chance. Elena nodded, nervous but determined, and got to work. And Simone, watching her new cook prep vegetables with careful precision, thought about the journey that had brought her here. From serving tables while hiding her dreams, to tracking down Alexander Hunt in a West Village restaurant, to standing in her own Michelin-starred kitchen. Sometimes the biggest career moments come from the smallest decisions, like choosing to speak up at a bar about acid balance in a fig compote, like refusing to stay invisible when you have something to offer, like believing you're worth more than the uniform you wear. Simone had learned that truth the hard way, but she'd learned it nonetheless. And now she was passing it on to the next generation of chefs who just needed someone to believe in them.